Welcome to episode 190 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Lieberman, and today I'm so excited to talk with you about how to create excess demand for your consulting business. That might sound like a problem, actually. With so many consultants that I talk to, I often hear, I don't have time to take on a new client right now. I don't want to create more demand than I can handle. I don't want to get too big because all of the headaches that might come with that. And today I want to share with you a strategy that you can leverage in your business to help you break through any plateau that you've hit, whether you're at a 100K plateau, a 200K plateau, a 500K plateau, $1 million plateau, whatever it is. One of the most common root causes of having that plateau is that you're not sure how to create more demand than you can handle. So that's what we're going to be diving into today, helping you to create more consulting work than you can handle in your consulting business, and why that's a good problem to have. A lot of times we think that's a bad problem to have because we think when we have more work than we can handle, it means that we might be damaging our reputation, or that we might be setting ourselves up to just create a lot of extra headaches in our life and our business. And we don't want that, of course. And so we end up suppressing the demand and falling short of what our potential is. So today I'm going to talk with you about how to manage through this concept of creating more demand than you can handle in a way that's a benefit to both you and to your potential clients, and in a way that doesn't have to feel like you're creating this behemoth of an organization. You can stay solo and create more demand than you can handle in a way that benefits you and your clients, and ultimately creates that flexibility and freedom and revenue that you dream of. So that is our topic for today. Before we dive in, though, I thought I would share just a quick update on some behind the scenes here at Melisa Lieberman Coaching. I am testing out some new and exciting things that I'll be releasing toward the end of this year and next year in Q1. It's so much fun. I can't go into a ton of detail, but suffice it to say, there's some exciting things on the horizon. 3 exciting projects I've got underway. So keep your ear out for those. I oftentimes get annoyed when people do this to me because I have a hard time waiting for the information. But I am sharing it with you because it's more about you thinking about exciting projects that you want to have in your business for next year, and what it might mean for you to start laying some of the groundwork for those projects, whatever they might be. So that is my challenge for you. That does not exactly relate to today's topic, but it does relate, especially if you're listening in Q4 and it relates to this time of year. I'm really thinking about what could make you so excited to wrap up this year and say, you know what, I finished that thing that was really hard or new for me, and set yourself up for something really exciting that you're looking forward to next year. That's what's happening here behind the scenes at Melisa Lieberman Coaching, and something you might want to think about for yourself in your own business. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. A little bit of a very high level, and I'll keep revealing more details as things get put into place and I'm able to share. All right. So that's what's happening over here. So excited for Q4 and 2025 next year. Okay. So with that, let's talk about the agenda for today's episode. We're going to first start off and just define what is excess demand. It's pretty straightforward, but I want to make sure we're on the same page about what I mean when I say excess demand. And then we'll start talking about why it's a good thing for you and your business, and doesn't have to harm your reputation if you handle this in a really strategic way. And then the next step of our agenda is to talk about how you can navigate the scenarios where you have more demand than what you can handle. And then I'll share with you 5 strategies for increasing your demand as a consultant. So you might feel like you're not even approaching the scenario where you have more demand than you can handle right now, or you might be at the place where you're fully utilized, or somewhere in between. These 5 strategies that I will share with you will help you with all of those scenarios, no matter what your pipeline currently looks like. And then we'll move into what I call the excess demand mindset. And I'll tell you what that looks like. And then we'll talk about the 3 obstacles to watch out for that will suppress your demand or water down your demands or create feast or famine. And then we'll finish up the episode with the 3 ways you can put this episode into action. All right. So that's what we're here for today. All the things about excess demand so you can put this into your consulting playbook. The companion resource that goes along with today's agenda is the book, Grow Your Consulting Business, the 14-step roadmap to make your independent consulting goals a reality. If you download the book, which I still have the full file there for you to download, as I've been telling you, at some point I'm going to change it so there's like the first 3 chapters or so, but I haven't done it yet. I've got other things on my mind and other things in the hopper. So in the meantime, you can go download it at melissalieberman.com or melissabook.com or consultingbusinessbook.com. All the things take you to the exact place where you can download the book. If you're listening to this in the future, maybe there's only the first 3 chapters, but the chapter that I want to point out to you today is chapter 9, which is your lead generation system to uncover high quality opportunities. And in there, I touch a little bit on excess demand in a slightly different way than what we're talking about today. So I would recommend going to look at that chapter. And if you can't download the whole book for free, I would recommend going to get it on Amazon. It's available in almost every single country in English for now, and you can go buy it and look at chapter 9 as well. Okay, so with that, let's dive into our agenda. What is excess demand? What do I mean by excess demand? Simply put, it means that you have more consulting work than you can personally handle. That's it. You have more consulting work than you can personally handle. It might mean you have more demand than you can handle because you're currently fully utilized on project work. Or it might mean that you have time off that is coming up. And so you've got more demand because a client is wanting to work with you and you've already scheduled time off or a vacation or a sabbatical, whatever that is. So think about excess demand and all the scenarios that you might be encountering, whether it's that you're fully utilized right now or you are overutilized right now compared to your ideal goals from a scheduling perspective, or you've got time off coming up where you've got a client who wants to work with you and you don't have capacity to take them on. That's what we're talking about today when I use the term excess demand. So hopefully that gives you a good picture in your mind as we dive into the strategies today to generate excess demand and to make sure that it's actually a benefit for you and your business and your clients and not a detriment. So next, let's talk about why is excess demand a good thing? It's so common, and you might think about this in this way too. It's so common when I talk to independent consultants, they tell me things like, I've got a contract for the next 6 months or the next year, and I don't have any more room to take on additional clients. So it makes no sense to me right now to generate leads because I don't have any way to take those on. And so then what happens is they keep telling themselves that. And then one of 2 things happens. That contract either ends early, abruptly, and or even just sooner than expected, and then all of a sudden you're left holding the bag wondering, oh no, I thought I was fully utilized and now all of a sudden I don't have any clients on my roster and I don't have any income in the near future and I've got to start back up from scratch to create my pipeline. That's one really common scenario that you may have encountered yourself, or if you haven't, it's part of being a consultant. It happens to all of us at some point or the other. The other scenario is that you're fully utilized and you know that you've got a runway, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever it is. And maybe that contract doesn't end early, but so often what I encounter is that consultants keep delaying and deferring lead generation, mostly because it's not top of mind. And also it's not as comfortable as working with your client. And so then you keep pushing it back, having good intentions to start working on your pipeline, but then you kind of wait too long and then it takes too long to start filling your pipeline again, and then you have a gap between clients, you have a gap in revenue, and you're not hitting the business goals that you have set forth for yourself. So you may relate to one or both of those scenarios. Again, these are very common scenarios that happen to us as independent consultants. And so a lot of times when I ask consultants, what do you think the solution is to these challenges? And they say, I need to get better at managing the timing, or I need to, give myself more lead time than I have in the past, or somehow shorten the sales cycle. And while all of those things can be valuable, the fact of the matter is the more we try to, I'll use the word manipulate, the more we try to manage or manipulate the timing of client work, the harder it makes it running our business. And truthfully, it's very difficult to control so many of those aspects. When we try to control our pipeline and our timing and our client roster and our capacity by trying to get better at timing lead generation just perfectly so we don't have gaps between clients, or we don't have a prolonged gap between clients, we're solving for the wrong problem. There's so many different variables there that trying to manipulate or manage all of them is such a futile effort. What do they call it? A fool's errand. I've been using that a lot lately. I've been doing lots of fool's errands in my personal life with my kids. Anyway, that's a side note. The point is that here we don't want to pursue a fool's errand. We want to really think about, how do we create excess demand, and then figure out how to handle that excess demand, versus trying to get really good about threading the needle of landing clients at exactly the right time, that are those ideal clients that are paying what we want them to pay from a pricing perspective. That's so much of a threading of the needle, versus the other way to approach this is to start thinking about creating demand all of the time. And then when you have excess demand, knowing exactly how you're going to solve for that problem. That's a good problem to have, right? That's a good problem to have. And we'll talk about the strategies to manage this excess demand in a moment without it impacting your reputation, where it's actually a benefit to you and to your clients. But why creating excess demand is a good thing for you is that you don't have to thread that needle. You don't have to somehow throttle yourself. You don't have to somehow suppress demand when you've got too much. And you don't have to somehow, try to create all these perfect conditions of timing and client type and pricing and amount of capacity that a potential client takes. We're not looking to create all of those perfect conditions. Instead, what we're doing is thinking about our business and how do we create more demand than we can handle, and then handle the demand that we've created. It sets us up to increase our pricing. It sets us up to create options for ourselves where we feel like we don't have to take work that's coming to us and worry about not taking advantage of that bird in the hand, if you will. It puts us in the driver's seat, or at least equal to our clients, where we're not feeling so desperate sometimes, and where we feel like we can pick and choose between the types of engagements that we want to take on. Listen, your ultimate capacity, especially as an independent consultant, is a very rare commodity. It's a very rare resource. And so you want to make the most of it. You want to make the most of it for, in the sense of how much money that precious resource generates in your business. You want to take advantage of that precious resource and how you're using the time, in the sense of the types of clients you're working with. Do you enjoy working with them every day? Or is it something you have to talk yourself into because they're a non-ideal client? The nature of the engagement, you want to set yourself up so that you can land those engagements that are the most fulfilling for you. So that's what we're thinking about. We're creating more demand than we can handle so that we have options, so that we're in the driver's seat, so that we're more of an equal to our clients versus feeling at their mercy. And so that we're able to set ourselves up to take on those engagements that clear the bar, in the sense of the compensation for those engagements, the nature of work, the client attributes. And so that you've got so much more ability to pick and choose what you take on. And your clients, quite frankly, see you as more valuable because the way you're approaching your business is one where you've got more demand than supply. So you can be more strategic, so that you can be more selective. Clients will see you very differently when you're in this spot. So that's why it can be a benefit to both you and to your clients. The other thing I'll say to you is most of the time, clients are more flexible than you might imagine. A lot of times we hear them say, I've got a really big problem. It needs to be solved immediately. I need you to come in on Monday and help me with this engagement. And you might say, listen, obviously I'm the best. You might not say it exactly like this, but let's just take the spirit of what I'm saying. Listen, I'm the best resource and expert for what it is you're looking for, but we can't get started for 3 more weeks. And so in between now and then, let's do a little bit of pre-work. Let's do a little bit of making sure we can hit the ground running, and we'll get going on this in 3 weeks. Clients are much more flexible than you might imagine. Think about the opposite direction. How many times has a client said to you, this is an emergency? I need help immediately. I need your expertise tomorrow. And then it takes them another month to get everything in line. That happens so often, right? So just think about this from your perspective in your business, that you can be in the driver's seat. So all of that I just shared with you is why excess demand is such a good thing for you in your business, and also for your clients, to see you as someone who's much more of a peer to them, who's got more demand than you can handle. And therefore, you're seen as someone who is truly sought after for what you do. And therefore, see your expertise in a different way. They'll see you and your expertise in a different way. All right. So, with that, hopefully you're on board here with me that having more demand than you can handle is a great thing, a great problem to have. And so, what do you do then? So, often that's the next question, right? Well, okay, great, Melissa. I'm going to create more demand than I can handle, but what do I do with it? Because I don't want to feel overworked. I don't want to compromise on my flexibility and freedom goals that I set when I became a consultant. And I don't want to let my clients down because I'm oversubscribed. You're probably asking yourself and asking me all of these things as you're listening. What I like to use as a tool that I call the excess demand protocol. The excess demand protocol. When my consultant clients get into this situation, when we're starting to think about the strategy for them in their business, one of the tools that I love to use is what I call this excess demand protocol. And what it means is that you're planning ahead, you know your availability, you are really clear about what your capacity is. So you've mapped all of that out. You know, for example, that in December, you're going to work 2 weeks and then you're going to take off 3 weeks. And you're very clear about what your schedule looks like. You're very clear that you're going to take off 2 months next summer. Whatever it is, you're very clear about what your availability is. And then you map out, what does it look like ideally from a client load perspective. Maybe you're a consultant who loves to have 2 or 3 clients at any one given time and a week between clients. And you really map that out and think about, what is the ideal? What is the ideal that you're looking for in terms of what you're wanting to land? And in addition to that, you're also very clear with yourself of when you have more work than you can handle. So you know exactly what that plan looks like ideally. And then you also know, like, think of a Gantt chart, for example, when we're talking about mapping out that availability and capacity. Think about a Gantt chart and how much capacity each type of client might take ideally, and how many you have at any one given time ideally, and really getting clear about that. And then from there, you're mapping out a strategy for yourself about how are you going to handle scenarios where you have more demand than capacity, because you're either fully utilized or the type of engagement is more, would consume more capacity than you would want it to, those kinds of scenarios. So, for example, you might be very clear with yourself about, are you going to leverage subcontractors or not? If you are they going to be client facing or behind the scenes? Getting really clear about that. So often I hear from consultants who tell me, I don't want to use subs. And then they start kind of backtracking on that. Well, maybe if X, Y, or Z were correct, in place. So, for example, I might leverage a sub if I got into the spot where I have more demand than supply, but I can't even get my mind to that place yet. So then you don't even answer the question. And even if you don't have any current clients in place right now, or your pipeline is empty right now, answer that question for yourself. What is your business strategy about leveraging subcontractors or not leveraging subcontractors? And get really clear about that so that as part of your excess demand protocol, what is your policy, your business policy? What is your business approach for this? When you have excess demand, one option is to leverage subs, but you don't have to. Another path toward managing the excess demand can be that you put a referral process in place where you decide that a client doesn't fit into your roster for whatever reason. Maybe they're a non-ideal client, or maybe you just simply would love to take them on, but you simply don't have the capacity right now. Putting a referral process in place where you're referring this work to other consultants and you're being paid for that. So not only are you benefiting those other consultants by sending work their way, you're benefiting the client because they get a solution to their problem that you stand behind. And also, you're creating a more passive income stream as a result of that. That's a win, win, win for all three of you, right? Another strategy for your excess demand protocol might be that you offer smaller type of consulting. So for example, when a client comes to you and says, I need this full engagement, you might say to them, okay, great. Let's start off with a strategy mapping type of an engagement. And therefore you're signing shorter term contracts where you're able to vet that client and make sure that they deserve us, have earned a spot on your roster for a longer period of time. These can be quick hit type of engagements, usually higher paying type of engagements, and then you're not consumed for your capacity for such a long time. Those are some strategies that you can leverage when you're thinking about what is your excess demand protocol. So sit down and write this out. What is your excess demand protocol? Don't just think, I'm going to figure that out when I get there. That's the problem. When we think I'll figure it out, that's a great problem to have, Melissa. When I get excess demand, more demand than I can handle, I'll figure that out when I get there. But the problem that happens is that oftentimes we end up sabotaging ourselves because we worry about creating more demand than we can handle, and what we think might be the reputation damage that's created by that, or the disappointment that we might create by not being able to take on a client. And therefore, we end up almost subconsciously suppressing that demand because we're worried about we don't know how we're going to handle it. What I'm saying to you is, you want to get into the spot where you know exactly how you're going to handle excess demand well before you have more demand than you can handle, so that it doesn't become a problem for you in your business, so that you can handle as much demand as you can create in a way that is in alignment with how much you want to be working and how many people you want to be managing, if any. All right. So that is the excess demand protocol. That then leads us into the 5 strategies that you can leverage to increase your demand. So the next question might be, okay, Melissa, I'm on board with this idea of creating more demand than I can handle, but how do I do that? How do I do that? And let me just say, there are plenty of episodes about how to increase the value of your pipeline. And there are also a lot of blog posts on this topic as well. We'll link to a couple of the key ones in the show notes. But let me just share with you the top 5 ways that you can increase your demand. The first is committing to a specific outcome. So often I hear from consultants that tell me, let's see how it goes, or I'm not sure how much demand I can create, and so I'll see what happens, or I don't even know where to start, or I'm worried that I'm going to set the goal too high and then I'll feel too pressured and disappointed, and it puts me into a spiral. All of those things are so natural for us as consulting business owners and even humans. But what I would suggest is you really get clear about the outcome you want to create for yourself in your pipeline and what the demand looks like. What if you set a goal to create $1 million worth of demand and then you had to go figure out what would you do with all of it? That's a great problem to create for yourself. So, number one, the strategy for increasing your demand is to commit to a specific outcome instead of saying or thinking or approaching it as, I'll do my best, but then see what happens. The second is that you implement a consistent lead generation process. Whatever your particular lead generation process or plan is for your own business, this is something I build out with my clients. We pick 2 or 3 lead generation processes that we know that we believe will work best for their client type and also how they want to be running their own business. So for you, think about it in this way. What is your lead generation plan? And then make that a consistent part of your weekly process. Do not start and stop. Do not start and stop based on the contract that you've got in place right now or when you think you're going to free up some availability. That creates the problems we've already been talking about on this episode. The other thing that I would strongly recommend to you is creating 2 pipelines. One would be a demand pipeline that's of ideal clients and engagements that you can't wait to take on. And the second is supply pipeline. These are subcontractors. If you want to build a business that involves or engages subcontractors, whether they're client facing or not. And if you don't want to build a business that includes subcontractors, then this pipeline, the supply pipeline, would be referral partners. Or you may have some combination of both, but you want to be building these 2 pipelines. The fourth strategy to increase your demand. So you create this great problem to have where you have more demand than supply, you have excess demand, is to ask yourself higher quality questions as a business owner. So often I hear consultants asking themselves the question, because they say the sentence out loud to me. And the question is, can I handle another engagement right now? Or when can I handle another engagement? Or when could I take on another engagement? That is not a high quality question in the sense that that perpetuates the existing challenge that you already got, which is you trying to thread the needle of finding ideal clients at the exact moment that you need them. Versus shifting the question you're asking yourself and therefore in answering, either you might be sitting down to physically answer this, which I highly recommend in your business owner thinking time, or a lot of times I love asking myself these types of questions before I go to bed because then my brain works on them all night long. And those higher quality questions as it relates to increasing your demand are things like, how could I juggle multiple clients at once while working 3 days a week or whatever your goal is? How could I increase the value of what I'm offering to make my time worth more to my business? What would be the qualification criteria that I would refer a client over to another consultant or to engage subs? Asking yourself those questions that relate to how are you going to handle more demand than you can take on versus how can you suppress and thread the needle type questions? How can you create demand right at the moment you need it? Those are not the questions we want to be asking and answering for ourselves. And then finally, the fifth strategy for you to increase your demand is by increasing what we've talked about on this podcast before, increasing your capacity to have. It's your mental side, mental game of how do you think about the supply and demand? How do you think about yourself? How do you think about you as a business owner who has more demand than supply? How do you think your clients will think of you? Are they going to be disappointed and just think that you've done the wrong thing? Or are they going to wonder and think of you as someone who's sought after and that they should be more timely in their decisions moving forward when they want to work with you? That all wraps up into this concept of your capacity to have, your ability to have the scenario where you have and handle it and feel comfortable with it and feel like it's not a threat in some way for you to have more demand than supply. So let's talk more about how to do that here, which is the excess demand mindset, having more demand than supply. What I would suggest to you is really thinking about the way you're thinking now and getting really clear about how do you think about you and your business in the scenario where you are not able to take on projects because you don't have availability. Ask yourself, what are your thoughts about yourself What are your thoughts about your business? And what do you think your ideal clients would think about you? In that scenario where you're generating leads and walking them through a sales cycle and you don't have immediate capacity to take them on, get really clear about your baseline mindset. And then you want to start shifting into what we were talking about last week or the last couple of weeks, that managing partner mindset. The managing partner, I will assure you, when you think about yourself as a managing partner, I will assure you that they are not trying to suppress the demand in order to be able to make it match the capacity they have on their bench. I can assure you, and you know very well, they're not trying to do that. Instead, they've got a managing partner mindset where they're thinking about, okay, whatever demand I create, even if I don't have the skill set in house, or even if I don't have the capacity, I know we'll figure it out. Now, listen, I know you're an independent consultant or a boutique consultancy, so you don't have the resources to bear as a Deloitte or a KPMG or an Accenture or a Boston BCG, whatever it is. But at the same time, you can take that managing partner mindset and think about, okay, I'm going to create as much demand as possible with my consistent lead generation routine. And I know for sure that I'll figure out how to handle that in the event that I end up creating more capacity than I have availability to support those clients by using my excess demand protocol. That's the excess demand mindset you want to be building. That's the capacity to have. That's the abundant mindset where you're clear that there's plenty of work, there's plenty of ideal work for you, where you don't have to stifle yourself with some scarcity or worry about landing too much work and how you're going to handle it. The other thing you want to be doing as part of this excess demand mindset is managing that fear. There's oftentimes so much fear. I'm going to be too busy. I'm going to feel overworked. This isn't sustainable. It's going to damage my reputation. All of those fears come into play, and you want to be aware of them and manage through them. Oftentimes they're kind of deep down. You don't even realize they're there, but that's why it's so important to have a business owner mindset routine as part of your overall set of business routines. So it's so important as that fifth strategy of creating more demand than you can handle, not limiting yourself because you're worried about the impacts of that, is you implementing this excess demand mindset as part of your overall business owner and managing partner mindset. All right, let's wrap up now with a couple of things. First, I want to really highlight for you the obstacles that you want to be watching out for that can be blockers to this situation where you're blocking your own ability to create demand, any demand, let alone more demand than you can handle. And that is number one, inconsistency. Again, when you're procrastinating, when you're deferring, when you're delaying your lead generation, you end up creating less demand than you're capable of, and therefore creating less results than you're capable of in your business. It's that inconsistency. It might mean that all you need to do is have 2 lead generation type conversations a week, or 1 or 3. It doesn't have to be that we're, spending a day a week on lead generation. It just means that we're consistent regardless of what our client roster looks like, for all the reasons we've talked about here today. Second obstacle you want to be watching out for that's a blocker to you having demand and a blocker to you having excess demand is the inner talk track. What is creating self-doubt? What is creating fear? What is creating worry that you'll create more demand than you can handle and you'll have a problem on your hands? Be aware of that inner talk track and build yourself a process so that you can uncover whatever's happening. I can assure you there's so much going on under the covers in your mind that you're not even aware of because you're a human, and that's what we do to ourselves. You want to be surfacing those things so you're really clear about where are you worried about creating more demand than you can handle, and therefore trying to build this thread the needle type process where we're setting up all these perfect conditions and therefore underachieving as a result of that as you're in your business. And then the third obstacle to watch out for as it relates to blockers for your demand and blockers for excess demand is thinking demand is out of your control. Let me say it again. The blocker is thinking your demand is out of your control. Now, of course, you don't have the ability to know that a specific client is going to engage you. And you might think that the market or the economy or where you live or the type of work you do impacts your demand. It doesn't have to. When you start thinking about how is your demand in your control, how can you create more demand than you have of supply? How can you create consistent flowing demand? How do you create demand on demand? How do you create demand just when you want it, whenever you want it? Those are the types of things you want to be asking yourself. Your demand is not out of your control. And if you want to debate me on that, I would love to hear from you. You can definitely send me a LinkedIn message because this is something that's so important that so many consultants overlook. In fact, I'm going to do a whole episode just on that topic because it is such a blocker for consultants. But in the short term, start asking yourself, how is this in my control? All right, my friend, this episode kind of grew into its own thing. So we're here a little longer than usual. But what I want to say to you is this concept of creating more demand than you can handle is a critical success component for you in your business. Go put this into action, what we talked about today. Go download the book at consultingbusinessbook.com and read and implement chapter 9. Implement the strategies we talked about today. You can go to the show notes. They'll all be outlined there for you. Implement those strategies. Create yourself an excess demand protocol. Figure out what your consistent lead generation strategy is. And finally, get help. I can help you as a coach. It is so hard to do this for ourselves. This is why I personally have my own coach for this exact reason. You can find my availability on consultmelisa.com. My name is spelled Melisa. So go to consultmelisa.com. You can book a time on my calendar, fill out an application. So at least we give a starting point for our conversation about what your current pain points are and what your goals are. And then we'll figure out if coaching is the best fit for you. It might not be. I'll tell you that. But it might be just that thing you need to help you get over the hump and start really progressing toward the business that you really envisioned for yourself when you became an independent consultant. All right, that's what I have for you here today. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.